Hey, your video is about to start. I just wanted to remind you that we are trying a new pilot of sorts of live Q&A for lunchtime with myself on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Probably will give it a go for about an hour. We'll see how it goes, if it can go longer than that. If no one's around to watch it, I'll just give you a little bit of um, any kind of information sharing tips I have for that day. Although I think our regular 9 a.m. share is going to be coming out as well. But anyway, I hope to see you there. And another reminder that we have our membership benefactor system that you can join if you want to be a benefactor and receive some of the perks that you get with that at the various levels. Okay. Thanks, guys. I'll see you later. Bye. Hey, I'm going to reiterate what I just discussed with somebody to alleviate their concerns about their disabled child who's been on SSI and has had Medicare for quite a number of years on the SSI, now becoming eligible for DAC, disabled adult child benefits, because the other parent has retired after all these years, and now the disabled adult who was their child has the opportunity to move from SSI to DAC benefits based on that retiring parent's work record. The concern is the DAC benefit is pretty significant relative to some because the parent was a fairly decent income earner and has a decent benefit himself. And the amount of the DAC benefit is way more than what the SSI was and exceeds the SSI limits such that there will be no SSI going forward at all. It will all be DAC. And his Medicaid was dependent and came to him because he had prevailed on SSI years ago. As you may know, many states have opted to rely on federal SSI awards to know it's kind of like their determination that a person is eligible for Medicaid if SSI has been granted. It covers the disability finding and it also covers the financial wherewithal finding. And some states do it that way, maybe so they can avoid as much labor power in making determinations themselves if they're already done through the federal government with the SSI program. It might not be the only way you can get Medicaid in that state, but it's one way. And of course, when someone gets the DAC benefits that now raise their income to a level that is not supported by their Medicaid program, it can be a real kick in the butt because Medicare comes with a premium. I don't know if you can hear those dogs barking, whereas SSI does not, SSI and Medicaid do not. So the law came about at Section 1634, which protects against this. And I'm just going to read it to you, and then we can just get into a little more. Section 1634C of the Act requires states to consider Title II child disability beneficiaries, also known as the DACs, who lose SSI eligibility as if they were still SSI recipients for Medicaid purposes. And this is so long as they would have remained otherwise eligible for SSI, but for their entitlement to or increase in Title II benefits. And this is for cases after July 1st of 1987. So pretty much most all here, right? Um, the key word that you should have to consider is the but for language in this. Otherwise eligible for SSI benefits, but for their entitlement to Title II benefits that started. So, in other words, if if they were on SSI, then they get the Title II DAC, but they also inherit $50,000 or whatever amount. If for some other income or resource reason they would not be eligible for the Medicaid or lose the SSI, they would have regardless of the DAC. This isn't going to help them, but it's for those in which the DAC was the reason and is the reason they are not eligible for SSI due to that financial impact of the DAC. I guess some people had tried to argue, well, yeah, DAC puts me over, so I should get it back, even though, well, I also got a big piece of income, you know, inherited or whatever, won the lottery, whatever the case may be. And so even though I would have lost SSI anyway, uh, the DAC. Now, the DAC isn't going to help you unless it is the DAC that is the sole cause of you losing your SSI eligibility, which makes sense also. But by and large, most people who go from SSI to DAC don't suddenly inherit a bunch of something, which leads me to the tangent that if an SSI person is going to inherit something, you can do some pre-planning to make that inheritance not eliminate his SSI. Of course, if he's a DAC person and not an SSI, you can inherit anything your little heart desires, and you're not going to lose your DACs because it's Social Security insurance that has been bought and paid for. And you otherwise remain, that person's dependent regardless. So the SSI business, though, of course, comes with those financial constraints. And if you know an inheritance is coming along, which is not uncommon, it doesn't have to be a big inheritance to impede SSI eligibility. Start looking into those options, whether it's special needs trusts or not a special needs trust, but one's going to immediately use it to buy something that is not a countable resource, of which there are many. And we might be having a video on that one of these days, a listing of sorts of things that one can more smartly spend down on when they have money that would otherwise defeat their SSI eligibility for any given month, and what they can do to kind of curb that loss and curb it, keep it short. Like if you lose SSI for 1 month due to income, don't lose it because of resources in the next. Um, but at the same time, using it not for frivolous things, for wise things that are going to actually save them from having to spend some of their SSI monies at a later time that they're currently spending it on. And we'll hopefully have a video on that because I know that's something that people have been asking for. I was thinking about doing it with a partner in crime here. So we'll see if we can get our schedules jiving on that, and we can both share our input and our ideas on that for you. Okay? Some of you probably know. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Hey, so if the subject matter of the video you just listened to is of interest and you want more on it, stay tuned. Here's another one about the same topic, but a little bit different. Bye now. Good afternoon. I wanted to share something that happened recently, and I think it can help some parents of disabled children, particularly when they become adults. So there's so many tenets to this, but if you have a child that is approaching 18 or somewhere between 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, even possibly older, and you believe that there is a very good chance they will never be able to sustain a full-time job, even a simple one, simple, sedentary, not carrying heavy, not having to do any kind of complex, detailed work. If you think that's the case, based on whatever their impairments are, which could be mental, physical, or both, there are things that you're going to want to know now, so it doesn't, what happens today does not prevent them from a particular benefit they may have gotten from the work taxes you paid for your Social Security. So this boils back to your work record. And most of us who work not only generate our own Social Security work record, earnings record that gives us retirement and potentially our own disability if we become disabled before hitting full retirement age, but it also provides our dependents with a benefit should they end up qualifying, being eligible for it. And one of those benefits is the disabled adult child. This is a child dependent of a parent who becomes disabled under the rules of Social Security before the age of 22. If that's the case, and it's proven through the medical evidence, and that's what I'm going to touch on later, eventually when a parent, either parent who has a Social Security insured status for retirement, if they retire, become disabled, or
or pass away, that adult who could now be 40, should there be sufficient proof that he became disabled prior to the age of 22, and disabled as defined by the Social Security laws, that child will be able to take we call it DAC, Disabled Adult Child Benefit, which is a decent sized percentage based on the parent's primary insurance amount. So this can be helpful because if that child is disabled, he might otherwise be left only with SSI welfare. And it may be better for him to be able to take Social Security under a parent's record, because there are less stringent rules in terms of what he can do with his life after. That would mean, he could inherit money, he could inherit assets that would otherwise be counted under the SSI program, gambling winnings, lottery, big gifts, all of that. So there could be a big benefit to being on DAC, which could also include Medicare. So he wouldn't be subjected to the SSI rules nor the Medicaid rules. That's, Medicaid is a welfare program. So what are the things you should be looking at? When your child is, and this could be even in his minor years, you want to keep all those medical records first and foremost, those IEPs from school, all the medical records. So if your child's young now and you're seeing this, even if you can't get SSI now because of family income, your income, spouse's income, the other parent, so he's not poor enough for children's SSI, get those medical records, get that robust treatment, get all the things that would prove he's disabled, even if he's not eligible for the welfare due to income or assets. When he's 18, those resources and incomes coming from you and or the other parent no longer get attributed to that now adult 18-year-old. So he could get SSI at that point. I haven't gotten to the DAC part yet. When, as an SSI adult, sometimes people get the opportunity to work through a vocational rehab agency and get a job that accommodates them and their needs, and they earn what would be more than SGA. So they're disabled, but now they're working more than SGA because of these great programs that are out there. It can be a double-edged sword in that oftentimes the person can make over SGA, which, by the way, this year, 2022, is $1,350, but they can't make much more. They certainly can't make enough to self-support. So while it's a great additional piece of income for them and might allow them to save, and they're no longer on SSI if they're making that kind of income, if they go over the SGA of $1,350, their DAC opportunities later on, when mom or dad make them eligible for a DAC benefit via their own retirement or disability or unfortunate passing, that DAC opportunity for that child who's now an adult can be lost because he's now earning more than SGA, even though no way could he work 40 hours a week, but he's making more than SGA. Now, of course, separate issue is there are ways to take what he's making that's above SGA and bring it down to below SGA if he has every month or the equal of every month impairment related work expenses. That could be medical copays for things that he needs for him to handle his disability, which then allows him to go to work. There's a variety of we call them IRWIs that can bring that down, but a lot of people don't have those. A lot of times people who have been disabled from childhood, it is a permanent condition and it's not coming back, but it doesn't require excessive drugs, or medications or anything like that. So oftentimes a person doesn't have IRWIs that are going to bring them under SGA if they were over by like $200 or $300 a month. So when your child does seek, and of course you want him to work part-time, right? As a young adult, it's great for their self-esteem, great for them bringing in extra income. Just know that these technical rules, if they're not followed, could screw him later in terms of collecting the insurance that you paid for him under your Social Security payments. So he's going to want to stay under SGA if he's going to be working. Now, if you want him to be getting SSI, you want to be under, you definitely want to be under SGA. He could still be getting SSI to some degree, potentially. But the DAC is what I'm talking about now. And that is if he's earning substantial gainful activity, he's not going to be able to get that DAC, because that period of time when he's over 22, making for more than a few months SGA or above, becomes like a technical bar to DAC later, because it says, no longer disabled. Now you can't prove that you've been disabled since before 22 because you have this gap when you weren't, technically. So it's a real, I don't really like the rule. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it should be the way it is, but it is the way it is. And I was reminded about it and wanted to share it because I do have a person right now who, short of proving that job that this particular individual has had for decades and is now an older individual and the parents are retired, this person has had a part-time job for 30 years with the same company. We know it was accommodated, but you might not be able to get an employer to say that. We are going to try the subsidizing, the exception about if it was subsidized. Like, yes, the person is making $15 an hour because they treated that person like every other worker, which is very kind. But that put the person way over SGA and there's nothing to bring it down. But we might be able to argue, and we're looking into this, that $15 an hour was part gift, part wages. It was subsidized. That person, given the slowness factor, the poor pace, the need for much supervision, and the reduced duties of the job, again, out of kindness for 30 years, that job would not have paid $15 an hour. And by the way, we're talking about before COVID, when salaries and wages were a little more normalized. Even if you didn't like what they were, they weren't the same. If we can argue that at most would have been a minimum wage or less than minimum wage earnings, and that the extra $7, $8 an hour was subsidy to treat them like everybody else, not because the work they did would have garnered that. In fact, they wouldn't have gotten a job in a competitive work environment with normal rules, but they were given special rules. So we're going to try to prove this. I don't know that the employer is going to be helpful. I don't know what the incentive for an employer not to be would be, but that's not there's no way for me to find out. So we are going to be trying to look into this subsidy issue and see if there's a way that this individual who could be getting DAC, particularly should she now have her income recognized as subsidy and or drop it below SGA, just cut a few hours off the top, might change the whole world. Because when her parents pass away, the individual cannot live alone, can't cook, can't drive. When the parents are gone, this will be an institutionalized person. And if she has DAC instead of SSI at that time, if she can't, the job can end, so you really got to be looking for these very foreseeable negatives. And you want this other thing for the person to have if those happen. So that's what we're trying to do. And the big crux of it that's difficult is the medical records from 30, 40 years ago don't exist. If a person was on SSI, the SSA should presumably have those records that proved them back then. But strangely enough, a lot of times they seem to be missing. So if you have a child it could be a minor or a young adult, order them, do whatever you have to do, in my opinion, to get those medical records and store them forever. And then if they get a part-time job that's accommodated or not, keep it under SGA. Just don't have them go over the 1350 unless you have some monthly, and you got to track this monthly and keep all the receipts for those impairment related work expenses. So you can use those later when you have to prove your case, because the income that's going to be coming out to the IRS is going to say over SGA, but you are given the opportunity to prove that in fact that there were these deductibles under the SSA law that would bring it under. And that, you know, for a multitude of reasons, but the biggest one being DAC later on. Be nice to see that person on Social Security when the parent passes away and isn't there to support them, a much higher amount usually, and would give them Medicare instead of just Medicaid, can be really helpful for their future. So put that under your hats if you have a disabled child or you think it might become that situation. You know, there are some obvious signs of potential, not of certainty. If a child has to be homeschooled due to behavioral or IEP needs, can't be in the school system, might be a problem going forward, right? When they hit 18. Keep those medical records so that when they are 18 and maybe eligible for the SSI because they no longer have your income being deemed to them, those medical records are there to show. Because a lot of times, if you stop treating with somebody, the medical records go away after a few years. Every state is kind of different. We like to think it's 7 years, but I don't think it always is. And sometimes they just disappear and no one's held accountable. So grab your records of your children or yourself and keep them on multiple backups, I'd say. If you're going to have a paper copy, I would also have some cloud copies, maybe some thumb drives. Thumb drives aren't expensive, but you know, if they go bad, you want to have backup. So you want to have 3 of them, maybe. I don't know. I'm a little cautious, but anyway, okay. Take that home if it fits you, and I hope it helps. Have a great day. Bye.